And away we go. It is the Nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken, right here on BearcatJournal.com. You know the drill. www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Download the app for Android, iPhone, everything Galactic. Get down to Dayton, Kentucky. Tell them to pump it up. Save yourself 15% off your order, or go to the app and they will bring it right to your front door, pretty much anywhere inside the 275 loop. All right, Aaron, let's get to it. This is an Aaron night, so we're gonna move you over here. I'm gonna go over here and go.
So I was looking for stories and stumbled across a name that we're all familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a pretty big story right now going on for college sports regarding the PASS Act, which is being introduced by Tommy Tuberville, Senator Tommy Tuberville.
Bum, 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 bum.
It sounds like it is a bipartisan law that's a bill being passed to regulate essentially NIL and talk about how much the athletes can make, especially focusing on healthcare, which has been a super big topic. But it also cuts out any chance of the athletes making any type of piece of the revenue that the schools make off of the backs of the athletes.
So here's the thing. There's also something in there that Coach Tuberville is trying to sneak in that limits you can't transfer until after your third year.
There is that as well.
So there's a lot of, yes, it's a bipartisan bill. There's still a lot of crap in there. Now,
That's any bill.
Yeah, but it's stuff that we've already seen courts shoot down. Like, there's no chance any of this stuff, like, it would be upheld in a court of law. We already know that.
I want to talk about the good things in the bill first and foremost.
There are some things in here that are steps in a positive direction. Yes.
So as we talked about the healthcare coverage, the health coverage would cover any sports-related injuries for 8 years after athletes finish their college eligibility. Athletic departments would also that generate more than $20 million annually would also be required to cover out-of-pocket medical costs for 2 years after the athlete's playing career, which would be non-related sports injuries.
Yeah, just in general.
Or I'm sorry. Yeah. And then departments that generate more than $50 million annually would have to cover 4 years of out-of-pocket. It also essentially protects women's sports and the Olympic sports, which we've talked about anytime this topic comes up. We've talked about that there is really no protection if football becomes its own entity of any sort for the universities to be able to continue to fund some of those sports. And things would probably take a huge hit in that regard. But California, this is kind of in response to a bill that California has passed or is trying to pass rather, in regards to trying to make the athletes employees of the university to where they would receive a piece of the revenue. So I don't see, I feel like the NCAA and plenty of universities would back this bill, but I'm with you. I don't see this bill going through largely because it takes so much power away from the athletes that they've finally gotten that they've never had before.
Right. And this is what they all want. This is why the schools have been going to Congress and saying, please,
anything,
pass NIL legislation, national NIL legislation that puts the ball back in our court. And the Supreme Court has made it clear that's not happening. They are not going back to a place where the schools have all the power and the athletes have none. It's not happening. There is a bunch of good stuff in here. The healthcare stuff is great.
Yes.
Trying to come up with a national NIL contract for players to sign that I'm
And that's
sure would have.
That's in response to all the states trying to have their own situation. Like Texas has their own regulations and continue to come out with more and more regulations
Well, I mean,
that
this is
supersede everyone's.
sure. This is also kind of just so that there is, in terms of the contract, not necessarily the laws, but the contract that's in place. So there's some universal language, some universal, protections and things like that for the athlete. There is some of that in there, but the more you dig into this thing, like there's very little that is about the protection of the student athlete. Correct. It is, we need to return the power to the schools and get back to screwing the athletes over. We need to make sure that they don't have enough power, that they don't have too much power.
And I love that they said that the reasoning that they want to make sure that the athletes can't transfer without having to sit out a year before those first 3 years at a university is because coaches are struggling to keep rosters intact. Well, no shit.
Off.
But what happens when a coach is fired or the coach goes to Wisconsin because they think the grass is greener up there?
Coaches are not some sacred protected species. They're not a protected class. Like you want to keep players? Guess what? When Luke Fickell was at Cincinnati, you know what he did? He kept players in the transfer portal era. Why? Because they believed in the culture and the system, and they wanted to stay. There were guys that the previous staff were like, you're probably not going to play here. Like, if you want to go somewhere that you're going to play, you're probably, it's probably going to be best for you to look somewhere else. And you know what the players said? We're good. Nah, fam. I'm having a good time here. This is great. That's on the coach to establish. That is not on the government to interfere in. That is on the coach. If you establish a great system and people want to play for you and people want to be at your school, they will not leave. Correct. If you don't give them a reason to leave, they will not leave. So a lot of this stuff, it just really annoys the crap out of me.
I agree. And I feel like, as we've seen in any type of negotiation between players, like a players union in any of the sports for that matter, and the larger entity of whatever sport it is that they're going against, whether it be MLB, whether it be NBA, NFL, etc., you have to have give and take on both sides, right? This doesn't feel like give and take on both sides. Well,
that's because there's no players union.
There's no
negotiating right for the players.
And if this is going to become a thing that passes, I think that two things need to happen here. Number one, it can't be done on a congressional level. It's going to have to be done by the NCAA as a body. But I think
they can't.
But that's going to take the players unionizing. And I think that actually is going to have to happen if you are going to get something like this passed through.
It still, I don't think, can happen at an NCAA level, even with a players union, because they don't have the power to make these things happen. Like, I don't know. Because when you're talking about what happens, like at the professional level, right? Mm-hmm. You have the entity which represents the ownership.
Correct.
And then you have the union. I don't know that the colleges represent like what we're talking about here, like in terms of like an owners group or I just don't know. Like, I don't know how it would work.
I just don't want to see a situation where the players lose all the power that they've finally gotten when they haven't had any such luck over the course of our entire lifetime.
Yeah.
Prior to the last several years, like maybe the last decade, if you want to go that far back even. And I feel like that's maybe a stretch.
Yeah, I just I don't know how they properly unionize. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I don't know how you fight it. I also don't know that any of this will ever get through all the steps of the league, the American government bureaucracy to get through.
Plenty of red tape for any of this to happen. It'll be interesting to see as this isn't going to be the one that passes. I think we can confidently say that. It's also not going to be the last time we hear of something trying to get through anything at the congressional level before it even gets to the Senate, before it gets to
just
type
keep
of
Tommy
appeals.
Tuberville out of it. Like, he's always going to try to sneak in something to screw over the players.
Can you imagine how big he has puffed his chest out to say, well, I was part of the NCAA and I can help you out with this bill, getting it through, because I was a coach.
Yeah, you were the one trying to oppress the players for the entirety of your career.
The other story I wanted to touch on a little bit, I know we touched on it last night, but just to do it here, maybe have a little bit deeper discussion. Things were a little chaotic with you coming in a little bit late and trying to get things corralled in that regard. But the Big 12 did announce that they are going to have 18 conference games this season, so they're not going to change anything for the 23-24 season, which is going to keep things in line for what they've had in the past. I believe it's 5 teams that they'll be playing twice. Each team is going to play 5 other teams twice and then play the remaining 8 teams once to get through the scheduling. What were your immediate thoughts as that was released? And we kind of we haven't seen the schedule yet itself, but we at least know who the opponents are. And we went into depth about how we are all excited about potentially going to Fog Allen.
Yeah, I started looking at some
that doesn't surprise me at all.
I think we're going to have to do like an 8-person. The 12s start to get a little
pricey.
A little pricey with the 12s. They're going to have to do an 8. It might be an 8. Look, it's first off, I think eventually they go to 20. Because it seems like it's kind of what everybody's doing. You get a better control of the inventory. There's less slop, and
it's better for everyone's schedule.
December.
Right.
It's not better for head coach's sanity when you're playing 20 Big 12 games. But it's David Bell's losing his mind.
Going for number 26 tonight.
I don't know. He lost it. It's a matter of just inventory control, being able, like when you have these type of deals with networks that they do, they want more good games, and rightfully so. Like that's how it should be.
Right.
So I wasn't shocked to see it stick at 18 as they're going through this Texas-Oklahoma leaving transition. I would kind of be surprised if eventually here in the next year, 2, 3, we don't see it go to 20, because it just seems a little tighter, a little more protective of your own inventory and what you control and what you don't control. The schedule itself, like, bring it on. I know people have lost their minds over Kansas doesn't come to UC in year 1. They'll be here. We're in the Big 12. Guess what? Kansas is coming. Like this, it's not a 1-year drive-by. Like, oh no, we don't. The only thing that stinks is that no trips to Austin, like we talked about.
Right.
That don't go in football, don't go in basketball. Like, that's kind of crappy. But you know how Texas is. Like, we're not dealing with those new guys. Like, they're out. But overall, the schedule I'm pretty pleased with. I think it looks good. I think it sets up well. It's going to be really challenging. I mean, what was the John Rothstein thing we mentioned yesterday? On average, last year, Big 12 teams played 21 quad 1 games. There's 31 games insane on your schedule.
Right.
21 of them are going to be quad 1. That's crazy.
And people were talking about how we didn't understand why they were scheduling Dayton. Well, a quad 2 game is going to be a walk in the park.
Yeah, that's a night off. It's a night off, a quad 2 night off. I'm excited for it. I mean, it's what we wanted. It's back to my second favorite Mick Cronin quote of all time. In the Big East, you're 1 week away from a 3-game losing streak. Doesn't matter. You could win 23 games in a row, and 1 week later, from Saturday to Saturday, you could be 23-3. Like, that's how tough the league is. You got to be on point. Your team's got to be ready to compete every night. And if you're not, you're going to get smacked. And guess what? If you are on your game and ready to compete every night, there's still a chance you might lose. Like, this is what high-level basketball is all about. I couldn't be more excited for it.
It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Also, one last thing I want to touch on. The American Athletic Conference did have their media days today. And Biff Poggi, I want to say that's how you pronounce it, Biff Poggi.
Biff.
What a name.
Biff.
He's Charlotte's coach, if you're not familiar. Lost his entire mind because he was only asked 3 questions at media days. Which
were they in person or was it Zoom?
It was in person. It was in person.
Oh, wow.
But I don't care enough to look.
I don't either. Actually. Like, I have no idea.
But I only bring that up just to say, God, it feels good to be done with this conference.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. That's the exit theme for UC. Not having I've been getting a bunch of emails from Chuck Sullivan, who's like the media guy for the AAC, and I want to respond to him like I do spam. I just want to send him stop. Like,
unsubscribe.
Spam. Yeah, no, just stop. Unsubscribe that's true. No, stop messaging me. Stop. Take me off your damn media list. Stop.
I will not miss any of this. And apparently, even though he lost his mind about only being asked 3 questions when it was his turn for the Q&A portion, I read this in the comments. I don't even know this to be an accurate fact or not, but supposedly Tulane was only asked 2 questions, which was even less.
It was the one thing that drove, like, the one of many things. There's nobody that covers any of the teams in the conference. There's no beat writers.
Why would you?
There's no team sites. There's no nothing. It's just crap. So glad to be in a place. What has Dave talked about? It's so good to be in a conference
that cares.
Teams that care. Mm-hmm. With fan bases that care. With people covering the team. We're having tomorrow night. We're doing Baylor. We're having one of the guys from Sikkim 365.
Right.
Like, I love it. I love it. Thank God I never have to deal with that crap again. It sucked. That's the nightcap. Big BBP tomorrow night. We'll see you there. Or big BCJ pod.
BCJ.
Yeah, you know what I mean. BCJ pod tomorrow night. We'll see you there. Right here on BearcatJournal.com.
See ya!